Below him, a single pigeon swooped down from the top floor of the Federal Office building as if anticipating the fall. The movement caught the eyes of some watchers, and they followed the grey flap against the small of the standing man. The bird shot from one eave to the other, and it was then that the watchers noticed that it had been joined by others at the windows of offices, where blinds were being lifted and a few glass panes laboured upwards. All that could be seen was a pair of elbows or the end of a shirt sleeve or an arm garter, but then it was joined by a head or an odd-looking pair of hands above it, lifting the frame even higher. In the windows of nearby skyscrapers, figures came to look out, men in shirt sleeves and women in bright blouses wavering in the glass like funhouse apparitions. Higher still, a weather helicopter from WNBC executed a dipping turn over the Hudson, a curtsy to the fact that the summer day was going to be cloudy and cool anyway, and the rotors beat a rhythm over the warehouses of the west side. At first the helicopter looked lopsided in its advance, and a small side window was slid open as if the machine were looking for air. A lens appeared in the open window. It caught a brief flash of light. After a moment, the helicopter corrected beautifully and spun across the expanse. Some cops on the West Side Highway switched on their misery lights, swerved fast off the exit ramps, making the morning all the more magnetic. A charge entered the air all around the watchers, and now that the day had been made official by sirens, there was a chatter amongst them, their balance set on edge, their calm fading, and they turned to each other and began to speculate. Would he jump? Would he fall? Would he tiptoe along the ledge? Did he work there? Was he solitary? Was he a decoy? Was he wearing a uniform? Did anyone have binoculars? Perfect strangers touched one another on the elbows. Swear words went between them and whispers that there'd been a botched robbery, that he was some sort of cat burglar, that he'd taken hostages. He was an Arab, a Jew, a Cypriot, an IRA man, that he's really just a publicity stunt, a corporate scam, drink more Coca-Cola, eat more Fruitos, smoke more Parliament, spray more Lysol, love more Jesus. Or that he was a protester, he was going to hang out a slogan, he would slide it from the tower ledge, leave it there to flutter in the breeze like some giant piece of sky laundry. Nixon out now, remember Nam Sam, independence for Indochina. And then someone said that maybe he was a hang glider or a parachutist, and all the others laughed. But they were perplexed by the cable at his feet. There were still work elevators sliding along the flanks of the towers. Maybe it was simple construction. And the rumours began again. Collision, curse, whisper, augmented by an increase in the sirens, which got their hearts pumping even more, and the helicopter found a purchase on the west side of the towers, while down in the foyer of the World Trade Center, the cops were sprinting across the marble floor, and the undercovers were whipping out badges from underneath their shirts, and the fire brigades were pulling into the plaza, and the red-blue of the truck lights dazzled the glass, and a flatbed truck arrived with a cherry picker, its fat wheels bouncing over the curb, and someone laughed as the picker kiltered sideways, the driver looking up as if that basket might reach up all that sad, huge way. And the security guards were shouting into their walkie-talkies, and the whole August morning was blown wide open, and the watchers were rooted. There was no going anywhere. The voices rose to a crescendo, all sorts of accents, a babble, until a small red-headed man in the Home Title Guarantee Company on Church Street lifted the sash of his window, placed his elbows on the sill, took a deep breath, leaned out and roared into the distance, "Do it, asshole!" There was a dip before the laughter, a second before it sank in amongst the watchers, a reverence for the man's irreverence, because secretly that's what so many of them felt. Do it, for Christ's sake, do it. And then a torrent of chatter was released, a call and response, and it seemed to ripple all the way from the windowsill down to the sidewalk and along the cracked pavement to the corner of Fulton, down along the block along Broadway, where it zigzagged down John, hooked around to Nassau, and went on, a domino of laughter, but with an edge to it, a longing, an awe, and many of the watchers realised with a sort of shiver that no matter what they said, they really wanted to witness a great fall, to see someone arc downwards all that great distance, to disappear from the sightline, flail, smash to the ground, and give the Wednesday a charge and electricity a meaning, that all they needed to become a family was 1 millisecond of slippage. While the others, those who wanted them to stay, to hold the line, to become the brink, but no further, felt viable now with disgust for the shouters. They wanted the man to save himself, step backwards into the arms of the cops instead of the sky. They were jazzed now, pumped. The lines were drawn. Do it, asshole, don't do it. Way above there was a movement. In the dark clothing his every twitch counted. He folded over, a half thing bent as if examining his shoes, like a pencil mark, most of which had been erased. The posture of a diver. The watchers stood silent. Even those who had wanted the man to jump felt the air knocked out. They drew back, clenched their fists. Another riffle of whispers went amongst them, a bristling of hair on their arms. Even the cops who'd made it to the rim of the observation deck were floored by what they saw. It was like having a knife blade at the tip of their thumbs. Sooner or later the blade would flick and the blood would rush. There was nothing to do, no way to catch him, no chance to prevent the leap. But then, to their amazement, the man unfolded upwards from his crouch, and a new hush settled over the cops above and the watchers below, a rush of emotion rippling between them, because the man had arisen from the bend, holding a long, thin bar in his hands, jiggling it, testing its weight, bobbing it up and down in the air, a long black bar, so pliable that the ends swayed, and his gaze was fixed on the far tower, still wrapped in scaffolding, like a wounded thing waiting to be reached. And now the cable at his feet made sense to everyone. And whatever else it was, there would be no chance they could pull away now. No morning coffee, no conference room cigarette, no nonchalant carpet shuffle. The waiting had been made magical. And they watched him as he stepped out, one dark foot slippered, like a man about to enter warm grey water. The foot was held in the air. The watchers below could not see it, but the cable trembled slightly. They pulled in their breath all at once. The air felt suddenly shared. The man above them was a word they seemed to know, though they had not heard it before. Out he went. Okay, that's the opening salvo. And obviously, when you mentioned the words World Trade Center, it all has new meaning. This takes place on August the 7th, 1974, when Philippe Petit did his tightrope walk between the two towers. And I was talking in class today about like how do you go about creating a narrative? How do you get to 9/11 when it seemed that there was when the towers came down there was a level ground of meaning. Everything smashed together. Everything had import. Whether it be a single fire hydrant that you would look at that was disused on the street, or you see one of those signs that were hung up around New York, looking for Alvin Jaley, or a dog going across on its own across the Brooklyn Bridge. Everything had meaning. And so how does an artist approach a subject like that when it is all so loaded with meaning? The further we get away from the event, the more meaning the artist can bring to it. But it seemed to me to be a dilemma, and so many of the writers, especially if you were living in New York, felt a duty or a need to write about 9/11. Whether that's right or wrong, I mean that's up for debate. But certainly, I wanted to find a way to get into it and not to be didactic about it, or hope not to be didactic about it. And then I started to realise, he did that tightrope walk, but at the same time as he was doing the tightrope walk, Nixon was about to resign. At the same time, the soldiers were coming home from Vietnam. At the same time, the first emails were being sent through the ARPANET. At the same time, there were questions about what art meant and what art was wanted to do with itself. There was Smithson and people like that doing it, and Turley and people doing all this fantastic work. Questions of faith, very, very important questions of faith. So that if you take that time and you fold it over onto this time, Vietnam hits Iraq, right? And the technology, the first emails being sent, hit the technology of today. Nixon hits Bush. I hope he knocks him out. But all of these things. So in a way, it works to be able to write about that time and to write about 9/11 by going into, say, the sex clubs in downtown New York, or going out to the Bronx and writing a story about an Irish monk who'd be in the Bronx questioning ideas of faith and liberation theology and so on. So this is what the novel is about, and there's many stories that all take place on the same day, and they all sort of intertwine and collide. I'm only going to read to you from one, two little parts from one, and I've done that first piece before, but I've never done this before, so this is kind of frightening.